Viktora, and I'm here to talk about hormones. What I did is I took the presentation that I would normally make. I normally concentrate on women. I pulled the thing inside out because what I'm going to start with is I'm actually going to start at why people have problems rather than what the problems are, and I'll move from that point on. Now, at first I didn't understand why I did this. However, after seeing what my subject was to speak on, the way Steve presented it, I found that quite unique. And the second thing is that it's almost going to be like a recap of everything that you heard, except what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to glue it together so that it all makes sense rather than just pieces here and there, and you still have some outstanding questions. What this will do is this will answer the questions. For instance, I start off right at the first portion there, and I start talking about cholesterol. Now, why would someone that's worried about hormones start talking about the cholesterol? And that is because cholesterol is actually the starting point of most hormones in your body. Those are the ones that look like a cholesterol molecule. There are other carrier or messenger molecules within the body. However, they don't necessarily have to look like cholesterol, and I'll give you an example of that. One molecule that has the ability to modify another molecule is a protein that's a concomitant portion of mad cow disease. Now, everybody has these rogue proteins in their body, but they don't have them to the point where they really affect them because you're getting rid of them as fast as you're creating them. With mad cow disease, what happens is you have more of these proteins, and they literally change other proteins to rogue proteins, and you finally have problems with, holes through your brain. It becomes porous like a sponge. But anyway, I'm going to start out with cholesterol. I'm going to try to stay in that area. If anybody has any questions, ask them. I'm not adverse to adjusting this in any way. I will do it. If you notice, the first thing I start off, I've got cholesterol, and what I'm saying is that this thing is necessary for metabolism and everything else in the body. However, what happens is you end up with an oxidized portion of it, and what it does is it changes into a vitamin D type compound. Now, that vitamin D type compound, what it can do is it can enter cells and it can change the calcium concentration of those cells. Other ones, what happens is it oxidizes, and it ends up in plaque areas, binding with calcium to injured areas of the arteries. Remember the guy who was talking about chelation? He asked that question. Well, I'm helping him out. I'm going to answer that question. That's actually what's occurring. And the chelation process, what it does is it takes those things back out. And it's a free radical process. Now, the other question was the total cholesterol within the body and the synthesis. That was another question, and I've gotten to paragraph number 2 here. What that is you have biofeedback loops within your body. And what they do is they look at the free radical destructions of cholesterol or altering of cholesterol within a body. If it is being destroyed at a high rate, that feedback loop will say, produce more cholesterol. And there's a reason for producing that cholesterol. Now, I also say that the oxidized cholesterol binds to the carrier protein, or I call it the charge complement of the cholesterol itself, which is the LDL. Remember, somebody said, why does this stuff bind to LDL and why does it go up? Well, it's simple. It's like your left hand, your right hand. This one over here, let's say, has a specific charge on it. This one over here was made to accept that specific charge, and what they do, zap, they fit perfectly. I used to do this in the chemistry lab for photoelectrons to do the same thing. What you do is you have an electron donor, you have an electron acceptor. You take the two things, you put them together, and pow, there they are. Now what you do is you shine a light on them, you heat them, you cool them, you do something to them, and what they do is they'll actually transfer that electronic charge across them. Well, that's what's happening over here. So what it says is that every protein, every cholesterol type molecule within your body is going to have a complementary type carrier, whatever that might be. And there's not 1, 2, 3. There can be thousands of these darn things. And they have the ability to transfer this stuff around, and or it will bind to it, and it will stay bound to it, and it will go someplace else, and something else will happen. Now, that's something else that would happen is, let's say you have a specific molecule over here, and it binds to a specific carrier. That couplet now goes to a specific site and activates that site. It can either activate it on a membrane level. In other words, the thing comes in and it settles onto a membrane and activates that site. Or what it can actually do is that it can actually enter a port that's in the cell itself. Now, what cells do, cells are really tricky little buggers. What they do is they form these receptors. Some of them are round. Some of them are kind of oblong. Other ones are holes right through the unit itself. Some of them permit a molecule to go through. Other ones permit an ion to go through. And you can actually, they actually have photographs of these things. And what they're doing is they're programming them now to take a look at how they work. Now, a lot of them, what they have is around the periphery of them. They have ions around the periphery of them. Those ions are things like copper, molybdenum, such things as that. And if those things are misprogrammed around the surface of them, what happens is this chemical or this ion won't pass through that cell. And once it passes, if it doesn't pass through that cell, it can't change the mechanism within the cell. Now, I'll stick with that right now. I don't want to get too far ahead of me. I can run this any way I want. Put the next one on. Let's see what happens. Okay. I see where I'm at. Yes.
These cell receptor sites outside of the cell, are there also cell receptors or sites on the inside of the cell for waste material and carbon dioxide to escape?
The answer there is actually yes.
Just keep talking.
Within the cell is a little teensy-weensy factory. And within that factory it has little subgroups. One of those subgroups is, let's say, it's called the mitochondria. Mitochondria is a little unit that is made up of kind of like ribbon-like material. That mitochondria, what it does is it produces energy within that cell. Now there's, yes. So it's performing that specific function. The waste product of the mitochondria in this case would be damaged DNA or CO2 or water or something such as that. Now, your problem is that when I say damaged DNA, what I mean is that something got in there. You had let's say a peroxide formed, superoxide dismutase, which is a chemical that is used to dismute peroxides. Does not dismute it. The peroxide runs over, breaks something apart. Now what I have is a piece of garbage. Yeah. Well, the peroxide is actually the free radical. Then what it does is it breaks it apart. Now, most of the time, what it'll do is it'll stop there, but that piece is now damaged. And it's like having a fishing rod that's broken. You throw the thing out. You're not going to fix it. So what it does is it takes it, tries to throw it out, recycle the pieces, or something such as that. Well, there we are. Right down to superoxide dismutase immediately. What I have at the top of that slide is the detoxification areas, and one of the main areas of detoxification is in your liver. Everybody's been asking, how do you detoxify aspartame? How do you detoxify PCBs? How do you detoxify DDT? Well, I hate to say this, but you don't detoxify any one of those. Your body detoxifies those things. It's just like the hubris of a doctor. A doctor said, "Well, I cured that guy." No, the doctor did not cure that guy. The body cured itself. The doctor was an assistant. If you're contaminated, say with aspartame, what has to happen is the liver must take that material and it must tear it up into little pieces and it must get rid of it either in bile or it has to burn it. It's the only way it's going to get rid of it. Now, if it tears it up into pieces, puts it into bile, and let's say it goes into the intestinal system, it can be reabsorbed. It can be reabsorbed as a toxin. So there's a bit of a problem there. But that's what the liver is for. Now, for detoxification, you better have a pretty good performing liver, because most people that have toxic substances in them have a very, very poorly performing liver. And what the liver does, it's quite an intelligent little organ, is if it can't detoxify something, the first thing you get is you get a pain right here. The second thing it does is it takes it and it stores that material out in your fat. Now, if you can't recall that material from that fat, if there is not enough capacity of the liver, that material will not be recalled. It'll stay out in the fat, like DDT, for instance. It stays out there as DDT or DDE. You can test a person 30 years after they've been contaminated. It's still sitting out there. It'll end up poisoning you. I have a patient that has 16 times the amount of DDT as normal in her system. She has 50 times the amount of PCB. She has paraquat in her system. Now, you know, I was really wondering, you know, where was this woman? What has she been doing? Well, I found out some of the things were answered right here. She was on some of these mind-altering drugs, which are PCBs. Good. She wasn't smoking wacky tobacco, right? And as far as the paraquat, well, you know, they're using that in cigarettes, so she's getting a little shot of that. Now I don't have to worry about that problem, but I still have to worry about the detoxification of the DDT and the PCBs also, because those chemicals act like estrogen. A Flieger. Those things act like estrogen. And that estrogen has to be detoxified by the liver. And if the liver cannot do its job, if that person is under a tremendous amount of stress, there is no way she's going to reduce the estrogen in her body. Don't I hear an outcry out there? I mean, I just said that they're supposed to reduce the estrogen in their body. Isn't that everything that is against what the AMA is teaching right now? Everything's been taught ever since 1948. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, as far as superoxide dismutase, I referred to that. Superoxide dismutase is very, very important, but superoxide dismutase cannot be formed unless you have certain elements in your body. And if you go down that, one of them is copper, one of them is zinc, one of them is selenium, iron. There's also other things that have to be in there to be able to permit you to make this stuff. Even though the parts aren't there, doesn't mean you can manufacture it. But did you notice that the person that was speaking about chelation, he said that things like copper and iron, free radicals in your body are bad for you? Well, that's true. But you have to remember that when you take these units, what's going to happen is they're going to be incorporated into a molecule, and that chelating agent can't wrap around that molecule, grab that single unit of copper and tear it out. The copper has to have a specific valence state. Now, normally, what happens within the plaque area of an individual, you get things like blood, built up in those areas. Well, that blood starts deteriorating, and then what you have is you have the hemin breaking down. You have the phospholipid envelope of it breaking down, and that's where it comes from. Yes.
Speaking of the iron, is it a ferric or ferrous state when it's usable in the body?
The answer there is yes, because what it does is it actually changes.
From one to the other?
Yes. The flip-flop gives it the ability to actually handle that's right. But the problem is actually the free radicals themselves. Because if there's a free radical there, what it can do is it can start grabbing other things. And copper's kind of a strange unit, in that copper can take on many valence states. You know, it can move up, it can move down, it forms ligands with other elements and things like that. So, you know, you might say, well, you know, copper 2. Yeah, well, what about copper 4? You know, because it can also do that. Well, that's what those chelating agents do. They try to pull that out, and then what they try to do is they try to take the oxidized cholesterol away by breaking those bonds, because it's hanging onto it.
Those double or triple? What is it called?
They're, no, it'll only form one bond, or what it will do is it will complex. It's kind of like having a basketball and a hoop. And what you do is you take it and you put it into that hoop, and it forms pi bonds, and it'll hang on there. Ferrocenyl compounds are made this way. You know, you can do that. Or what you can do is you can take it and you can have an oxidized portion out here, and you move it close to it, and it latches onto the copper. Now you can't get that cholesterol molecule off that thing. But if you can get a chelator around this, you can get rid of it. There are also natural chelators in the body that people take naturally when they eat the proper food. You know, the vegetables are normally loaded with them. We call them vitamins. You know. Hair slide changer. Look at this. You want to flip that? I used to, I'm going to give you a warning. I used to put on classes for guys in industry. I was a trainer for DuPont. And what I would have is I would have a giant ring, you know, about an inch thick, and I would set it on a table. And if anybody started to doze off, I would just, you know, kind of nudge that thing. And when it hit the table, it would make such an explosion, the guy'd almost jump out of his seat. Well, after once or twice of that, you know, as soon as the guy dozed off, he was ready. He would come awake like right now, and he wouldn't go to sleep. So, you better be careful.
Where am I?
Okay. What I have here is I made up a slide so that people could actually see what's happening within the body, and this is also a bit of a propaganda sheet. The propaganda on this sheet is don't take D-alpha tocopherol vitamin. Don't. Take the tocopherol, OL, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. And to prove this to you, if anybody has hypertension, has been in hypertension medicine, they can take the D-alpha tocopherol, and nothing will happen. Their blood pressure won't go down. It has a nil effect. However, if you take the alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, what will happen is their blood pressure will shoot straight up. I've had people, their blood pressure has gone up to 190. It was 150, shot up to 190. Oh, I'll never take that stuff again. Well, what was happening was it was actually having an effect on them. What it was doing, it was shrinking the blood vessels. They were coming back to their original capacity. However, there was a volumetric problem within the body because the renal system couldn't take it out fast enough. So what we would do is we'd take the vitamin E, and we'd take first 1/4 tablet and put it on their skin. The next day 1/2. The next day 3/4. The next day a whole one. Vitamin E goes right through your skin. Very, very short time. It passes directly through it. And what would happen is during that period of time, you could literally bring down the volume of their blood, so that when they took the normal pill, you know, a whole one, what would happen is they wouldn't have any drastic effect. Now, people that are normally hypertensive, this will lower their blood pressure. It will drop it down. And the other thing is, if you want, you can use a magnesium or magnesium sulfate, but don't use magnesium chloride, whatever you do, because that'll raise it. But magnesium is the other key to the whole system. Not magnesium chloride. Magnesium chloride will raise their blood pressure, not lower it. Magnesium sulfate will lower it. where's the chelation doctor? He's not here. Chelation doctor. What he will normally do is he will normally take and put a specific amount of magnesium sulfate into either a whole bag or a half bag or whatever his blend is. And what it will do is it will literally lower the blood pressure for that person. And also there's a thermogenic problem with chelation, which I don't know whether he mentioned or not, that when it does drop into the blood, because it does complex with magnesium, at that point you get a thermogenic reaction and you got a bit of a problem. However, if you pre-chelate it and you drop it into the blood, you don't have that reaction. So the person isn't responding to it. It's an exothermic reaction. Where'd it go? Hey, all right, I like that. Yeah. You guys back there need some Prozac, you know. On this slide, I followed everything down so that you can see exactly what's happening. You start off with an antioxidant in this case, and then the antioxidant is my vitamin E. That's my OL. Always remember that. Always remember that OL. And what I say is that this thing is going to go to a tocopheroquinone. You don't have to know what a quinone is. Just know it's another chemical. You know, don't worry about it. And then what happens is that once again is oxidized by vitamin E, which reduces it to a glutamate molecule. That's what you'll remember. Don't worry about the glutathione or anything else. Just that it goes to this step. Then what happens is it goes from that point. It's going to be reduced by B2. Then that's going to be reduced by to NADH, and then that is going to be oxidized by the Krebs cycle, and so on and so forth. And then what you end up is you end up back where you started from. It all goes back, and you've regenerated a unit. And if they keep moving that thing around, it's going to drive me crazy. Now the next thing, the dietary fats is the greatest source of free radicals. Now, that's a true statement. It's a false statement. The greatest source of free radicals is the use of oxygen within your system. You have millions and billions and trillions of free radicals being formed because, number one, they're necessary within your body. You have to go through a specific step to be able to get energy out. Your body has safety systems, very profound safety systems to deal with those things. That's a superoxide dismutase thing, you know. You've got them here, there, everywhere. Your body has protected itself as best as possible. However, people go out and what they do is they take a piece of meat and they char it as much as possible. They fry the darn thing. They cook it on a barbecue. What they try to do is they try to make this meat really taste nice and flavorful. They put smoke on it, liquid smoke. That used to be one of my favorites, by the way, liquid smoke. Did it fast. I was killing myself. And what happens is you start ending up with new bonds forming, unusual things, double, triple bonds, everything you possibly can. Then what you do is you take this thing in, you eat it, and it's incorporated into your body. You start having these things floating around. Now you're not supposed to eat this way. You weren't designed to eat this way. You were designed to eat very, very moderately. And that's one of the ways. That's one of the reasons for things like Dutch ovens and things like that. Where you put a piece of meat in something and you cook it in a steam environment with the exclusion of oxygen. That's what's really going on. Or soups, or boiling things in stews. What you're doing is you're excluding oxygen. Now, if I were a good chemist, what I'd do is I'd cook my meat in an argon environment or maybe a nitrogen environment, so I don't have any oxidation to it. It wouldn't look too good, but You can put the next slide on. It's like magic. The other thing, oils. This is a great source of consternation for me because Number one, I've hated margarine all my life. I don't like margarine. I don't eat margarine, and I won't eat margarine. My mother tried to slip it in our meals, and she tried to mix it with butter, and I grew up on a farm. I don't like that stuff. Well, then soybean oil came along, and peanut oil, and all that stuff. Well, we used to cook with that terrible stuff that they call lard, and we used to cook with butter and things like that, the bad products. They're not bad at all. Those are the best things for you, actually. My wife's from Germany, and what we would do is we'd watch these old timers take this bread, and they'd put that lard on it, and they'd sprinkle onions on it and dill and things like that, and they'd eat this thing, and we'd say, oh my God, these guys are going to die, every single one of them. Well, in her town, in her small village, there wasn't anybody walking around crippled. They weren't. You didn't see them. You didn't see them all hunched up, and walking around. You didn't see them with all these terrible diseases. You didn't see them with with Alzheimer's and stuff like that. Tuberculosis wiped a lot of them out before, but still, these people still became aged, and they still should have had these problems, but they didn't. And my question was, well, how come all these people, 95 and 105 years old, they ate that stuff? What's wrong with us? Salt's good for you. That's right. Because salt, you have to use salt metabolically. But salt, it becomes dangerous when you have a potassium and magnesium deficiency. If you have insufficient magnesium and you eat salt, all of a sudden what happens, the ion switch in the cell draws in water and zap, up goes your blood pressure. You wonder what happened to you. Where was I? Okay. Those oils, this is very, very important. Those oils, what they do is they are incorporated into the membranes. You take in oils, and you guys a bunch of health food nuts? You like to eat flaxseed oil? How about, would you eat linseed oil? They're the same. Yeah. Why would you? First off, can your body utilize these oils efficiently? The answer is no. That's absolutely correct. It can't. I saw a chart, a 6-page chart on oils. This one doctor sends blood up to a Mayo Clinic, and what they do is they run every oil you can possibly find in the body. And the thing comes back, and you look at this thing, and it's all supposed to be normal, right down the line. It's over here it's too low, over there it's too high. Well, what happens is you go down this chart, and all of a sudden something's all the way too low, something over here is all the way too high, and you say, this person's supplementing in some way. But is the body supposed to work like that? Why can it not? Why can you not supplement up here? And why doesn't it just chop it up and fill the blanks back up there? Well, I used to think that it had the ability to do that. And what I found out is no, it does not have the ability to do that. But it does have the ability to take very short-chain fatty acids and build them. Fact is, your body has the ability to take 2 carbons and glue those things together and make 2, 4, 6, 8, blah, 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 blah. And then take that thing and put double bonds in it, and then take that thing and couple it together and literally make a cholesterol molecule. That's how you make it. That's how you make these things inside of you. But it cannot take something that's 3/4 of the way made, or something that looks odd, and chop it up backwards. It does not work very well that way. You'll find a lot of people who give liver purges and things like that, where they'll feed you half a cup of some strange oil. What's actually happening is that oil is going into your body. Your body's looking at it and saying, man, I don't need this amount of oil. I got to get rid of it. So it takes it and jacks it into your bile, and then that puts it into your intestines, and it tries to kick it out the tailpipe. That's the overall objective.
Question on flaxseed.
Yes.
For what it's worth, for example, I'm grinding up flaxseed and eat it within 10 minutes. I'm told that the oil then is benign. There's no problem with it.
I'll restate that just slightly. People are made to eat a limited number of seeds and beans. For instance, they say that the Japanese eat a lot of soy. Yes, I was over there. They eat all 47 beans at a sitting. I counted them. They were on my plate. I eat just like a Japanese. However, they eat a little more carbohydrates than we do. And the reason is they can tolerate it. Us as Europeans, most of us can't. We can only tolerate a moderate amount of carbohydrates because what we do is we take it and jack it right back into fat. That's why we have a lot of obesity here. But if you take the oils and you cut up your beans and eat them or seeds, it's benign, but not in excessive amounts. You're not made. I mean, you couldn't run out in the field and collect enough flax seeds to eat the amount of flaxseed oil that a person normally would. You'd have to eat bushel baskets of the darn stuff.
Not to get off the subject, but literature I have says that a quarter cup of flaxseed ground will give you whatever the chemical is as a super anti-cancer chemical. And you'd have to eat like 80 cabbages to get the equivalent of a quarter cup of flaxseed ground.
Yes. But also remember about cabbage that if you eat that specific item, what it will do is it will stop your thyroid dead in its tracks, so you will not be able to produce any hormones, and you will also end up with oxalates in your kidneys, and you'll end up with either crystals or stones.
From what? Cabbage or from flaxseed?
From the cabbage, not necessarily from the flaxseed. Yes. Exorbitant amounts of omega-6s will cause a crash in the immune system. An example of it is primrose oil. Primrose oil, taking it for about 2 months, will develop in some people, and remember bio-individuality, that's what they were talking about up here, the girl with the aspartame. She was actually talking about bio-individuality. Each one of us is actually different. We're not the same. We're not an average. We're nowhere near. Each one of us processes everything differently. That certain people, when they take that stuff, they'll immediately start exhibiting lupus-type symptoms. I'm one of them, by the way. I was taking primrose oil, and all of a sudden I broke out with a crease in my head. Looked like somebody hit me with a hatchet. The skin was literally just deteriorating in one spot, and I tracked it right back to that stuff. There's a yes. Cod liver oil? No, I haven't spoken about cod liver oil yet. They took 40 dogs and you divide them into 2 groups. Of the 40 dogs, one they fed cod liver oil every day, and the other one they fed no cod liver oil every day. The group that was taking cod liver oil to a dog died of cancer. Now, I go back to how many beans can you eat and how many fish can you catch, and do you normally take fish and squeeze them? Yeah, so I mean, it starts getting out of our natural area. I don't know what okay. Okay, I think it was on the last slide, and I said I was going to answer something here, and I was speaking specifically about membranes and the incorporation of oils. Those oils are incorporated into the membrane of the cell. The membrane of the cell needs omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids. When the omega-3 and omega-6 are in a ratio of 4:1, everything operates properly. However, if they are not, or if some fatty acids were incorporated in there that don't belong, insulin cannot assist the entrance of glucose into the cell. And what you end up with a metabolic deficiency. What that shows up as is you have a minor problem with your thyroid. And what a person would normally do is they'd go in and a doctor would say, well, we can hit you with a little thyroid and it'll lift you up. Yeah, their temperature goes and then down. They say, well, okay, maybe we ought to give you a little bit more. So now you're up to, say, 2 grains of thyroid, Up it goes, you know, and the person's just about limping along. As soon as they go under a little stress, down it goes. Okay, what's the problem? The problem is that they actually have an imbalance of the oils, and those oils are essential to the protein within the cell. And without that, you can't use your T3. Your T3 will not convert to energy. Now, what we've done is we've kind of gone all the way around the subject. What you do is you replace that oil some way. One area where you get that oil is in butter. Butter, ghee, specific cuts of coconut oil. I actually had to go out and find a specific cut of coconut oil because people say, oh, I eat butter, you know. Well, I also didn't tell them it was coconut oil. What I told them is a metabolic facilitator. The heavy coconut, the heavy oils you do not want. They have to be very, 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 very light oils, and they also have to be edible oils. And those things are those acids, and they can be produced into the omega-3s and the omega-6s by your body. They become your essential oils. That's right. There is no such thing as essential oil. They're essential within you, but if you have a vitamin deficiency, you can't manufacture those things. Therefore, you have a disease, and then they call them essential oils. But if you have the proper vitamins, you can manufacture them into them, and you don't have that problem. So are the essential oils or are not essential oils? If you have a disease, it probably is essential, but if you took the vitamin, you won't have that disease, and then now they're not essential. There's a big argument about that right now. A lot of people are just off balancing themselves. So that's the answer to your question. We flip that thing. We'll move that thing on. Yes. No, not necessarily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hurry this thing along because I'm going to run out of time otherwise. I'm going to get in a big trouble. Yeah. Take it and move forward about, keep going. Those are age-related diseases. Everybody knows what age-related diseases are. If you don't wake up hurting in some way, you're not alive. Olive oil is great for you. Yeah, okay. That's fine. If you go down this thing, what I'm talking about is thrombosis of the system. That there's problems there, and we'll cover that in estrogen. We have over here homocysteine levels. You counter that with folic acid, B12, B6, and choline. And you should take at least 400 plus. I take 1,600 of folic acid a day, and I take 1,000 of B12. If I don't, I'd end up with arthritis. They want to replace my hip. Okay, go ahead.
Comment on homocysteine. Is that, I've seen controversy back and forth. What are your senses on it?
Yeah, homocysteine, what it is, it's a marker for thrombosis within the system. That thrombosis is normally created by a vitamin deficiency in the B series. It can also be exacerbated by a C or a B6. You know, just a deficiency there, and or it can in women by a protein deficiency. Keep going. You're welcome. The reason I have this one up here is because if a person has a problem with a B deficiency and or a C deficiency, they're allowed to be diagnosed with cancer of the immune system. Go ahead, change her again. I just had a woman have chemo because of that, and she didn't. What she has a C deficiency. The microphages in your body will go out and they'll start ripping it apart looking for the C's. Go ahead, one more. I want to go all the way. Just keep putting them up there, and what I'll do is I'll tell you when to stop. Go one more time. These are things you should really stay away from. What I did is I went all the way down the line. I said, okay, you're going to have all these problems. If you notice, I put estrogen in that system up there. as far as a maluse of calcium in the body, and I also went to highly oxidized things in the body, such as fats, proteins, oils, and cholesterol, and also stay away from refined rice, wheat, and flour. And go ahead. One of the people here asked about the use of diabetic sugar, which is fructose. Fructose will change the protein in the eye, and you end up with cataracts. There's a parallel building within the eye, and what it does is that spiking tendency has a tendency to give you cataracts. So you have to be careful with that. That's the latest research. If you notice on the bottom portion of that says the central nervous system has 30% more cholesterol, 30% more than the rest of the system. The reason for that is the cholesterol is actually an oxygen scavenger or a free radical scavenger within the system. It's like a computer. You've got a fire in the darn thing. It's liable to catch fire. What you'd do is you'd completely deluge it with something that would absorb the free radicals or put the fire out immediately. That's the first job of cholesterol. Okay, go ahead. And that's one of the reasons why your cholesterol rises when something starts going wrong. That is indicative of something. You can get rid of that one also. I'm going to get up into the menopausal area quickly. You can shoot forward. You can shoot forward almost to the charts. Either that, or I'm going to get evicted. Yeah, actually, I could stand up here and I could talk for 8 hours on it. What I'm going to do now is number one, men do not understand women. Women do not understand men. Men are kind of ruggedly built. Their tickers just keep right on going. When a man has a problem, he just dies. He has a heart attack, breaks a mainspring, something happens, and the woman says, "Well, the guy died. What the heck, But with the women, what happens is, they start going off because they've got little clocks and timers and everything else in them, and what it does is it affects them in little ways. So you start looking at, a guy starts looking at the women, well, I don't know what's going on inside her, Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you out. First thing is all herbs aren't equal. Don't believe it. All those herbs on that list, if anybody wants a copy of these things, just ask me. Those things are estrogenic. Now, as people make tea and all that stuff, they get themselves in trouble. Okay, go ahead. Yep. So when somebody's having a hormonal problem, what I'm going to do is this right here is, if it's written proper way, it's Russian. Yeah. I've got a copy of this on my desk. Every woman should get a copy of this thing, and copy it out and give it to your friends, because what this is a deleterious effect of the physical. It's what's in your body, what you make, effects of estrogen. And what I'll do is, if you want me in there to go through each and every one of them, I'll do it. Go ahead, but get this list copied out. Now, men and women, supposedly, estrogen is a female hormone. No, that's okay. I can read it. Estrogen is supposedly a female hormone. It's not estrogen that makes a woman a woman. It's actually progesterone that makes a woman, and all the progesterogenic compounds within her body. Estrogen is only there for procreation. And she's only supposed to be exposed to it for 3 to 4 days a month maximum. So when you take birth control pills, you got problems. Now what estrogen does is it's going to attempt to make a cell divide, or set it up to divide, or move it towards critical mass, or something such as that. So that's one of the reasons why women, when they take this stuff, all of a sudden they have problems with every one of their sex organs, having a problem, or what happens is they end up with cancer throughout them. Remember the aspartame thing? Well, what that tells me is that aspartame is actually suppressing progesterone and permitting estrogen to reach pathological levels, because everything she described is exactly that, and you'll find it on that list. What this is a flow chart of what the different hormones are within a person's body, and how they move. And up there on the upper, let me see, I can use this thing. Fancy. Yep, that doesn't work. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Third one over on the top row. You notice it has DHEA up there. people say, well, take DHEA. DHEA, what it's going to do is it's preferentially going to come down here and it's going to change to E1, E2, or E3. E1, E2, or E3 are stress hormones. If a man goes into a hospital, he'll have more estrogen in his body than a woman will. It's just because of the amount of stress. Normally he doesn't, yes?
It's not good to take DHA. What about the precursor pregnenolone?
You can back that up to pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is just fine. The fact is, I use pregnenolone. It now depends upon the bio-individuality of the individual and also what their vitamin mineral content is. Everything. Some people can turn cholesterol to pregnenolone, and they can turn pregnenolone to progesterone. But some people have a block within those areas, and a lot of women, they're so far down, they can't make that conversion, so what you have to do is you have to supplement it at the next level. So what you do is you slip it in. Also with men that are really, really just ready to kill somebody, rage, that type of thing. Yeah, what you do is you slip them some pregnenolone, and all of a sudden, whew, down they come. It also has some other fabulous features because what occurs is that it changes the use of minerals, vitamins, and everything else. If these things dive, you're in trouble. And if you notice at the bottom down here, I've got the an oral contraceptive. Now, that thing actually looks more, if you go back up, it's more like the male hormone, and it has to go through a metabolism before it can be changed into anything. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, they think that that's going to, that thing makes it patentable. Now, it does make it patentable, but those little you better flip that thing around and, no, that's okay. Those little things, what they do is, it's like having a bunch of rings tied together. And then what you do is you tie strings onto it, and then you start pulling on one ring. And what it does, it propagates across the other, and it changes this ring. Well, that changing in that ring, it doesn't really change it that way. What it does is it withdraws electrons from it. So that thing that it complexes to, it doesn't fit it anymore. So it changes the receptor protein, the carrier protein. Remember, yeah?
Hydrogen ions. Doesn't it withdraw hydrogen ions, changing the pH?
That's changing the pH. But what this is withdrawing electrons, so that instead of the electrons being located on that ring and going around, what they do is all of a sudden they go out here. This ring now, that complexing thing, remember I told you? It doesn't fit it now. It's like having this trying to fit it, And it says, man, it doesn't fit anymore. What I have to do is I have to produce this. So now you got a big problem because the carrier protein changes. Then what happens is it's going to start dropping those things out. You lose production of your hormones, or you lose a pathway or something like that, and now you've got a real problem. And how do you rebuild that? Well, what happened is somebody discovered that plants also produce these things, or close analogs to them. Now these are the general analogs to them, but there's actually about 3,000 different analogs. These are called the diacegenins, sapogens. We've got a whole bunch of different names from them, whether you go in a chemical book or just speak to a naturopath or something such as that. They're approximately the same thing, but your body can actually change these things if it wants. The other thing is that it can use these things environmentally at the lower portion of the hormonal pyramid. It doesn't use them up here with progesterone, it uses them down here. So it starts stacking these things in where it requires them, and it can use one as a precursor for this or a precursor for that, or it can use it against this or against that, and the carrier protein and everybody's satisfied. But it can't use it up here. Then when that stress comes off, what the body is able to do is able to produce these things up here and then fill the pathways. So what we're really playing with is we're playing with pathways, how they move through the system. On the lower portion of that thing, what those are is the one up in the upper left and the bottom portion is actually from anise. That's an estrogenic molecule. There's also a whole bunch of other ones. Most of the seeds that we use for spices have estrogenic components to them. And then as you start going across, I put DES in there, and what I did is I drew in a phenolic molecule with a radical sticking out there, and I threw in analogs to DDT, which are over there, and then heterocyclic systems, and finally the killer that I was exposed to, which is called 3,4-benzocarbazole, or 1,2-benzocarbazole, which acts just like a hormone in your system. I used to come home with black under my eyes, and shaking and everything else, and wonder why. That was before they found out about all this stuff. I was one of the guinea pigs. Okay. This is how they describe what happens. It's a pituitary talks to the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary jacks out these hormones, supposedly the FSH and the LSH, and also it puts out progesterone and estrogen. There's a specific cycle that it goes through, and if you notice right in the middle of this thing, what it does is I've got a little chart there. Now what you can't see is those things are actually all different scales and are no good. But this is what they present to doctors. Okay, next one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start putting this thing onto a graph real fast. Okay? How'd that mineral curve get in there? That's fine. Leave it right there. I'll jump over to minerals right now. Minerals. That right there is the absorption curve for age. If you notice right at about 48 years old, all of a sudden your minerals go down. Next slide. That's just about for everybody unless you're in really good health. That's the average curve. When your minerals go down, you got a big problem. That too, yes. This is the curve for FSH. Remember the one I told you was presented to doctors? This is what it looks like. You notice it peaks before ovulation. This is where that dotted line is. Left-hand side is pre-ovulation. The other side is post-ovulation. Next slide. That's a hormone that's excreted by the pituitary saying, okay, let's get everything set. Let's move everything into place. You know, this is what's supposed to happen. Okay, post-ovulation, same pituitary. It releases approximately the same hormone. They call it LSH. And what it does is it peaks at that point and it says, okay, egg's supposed to be bound and everything, and something else is supposed to happen. Go ahead. There's a hormonal feedback loop. If you notice, your estrogen kind of comes up in the beginning of those days, and then what it does is it kind of goes across and then drops down. Next slide. The three estrogens will follow pretty close. They'll be slightly out of balance, but your body will balance them. If you take an estrogen, what it will do is it's going to balance against whatever your body needs. I don't care whether it's a good estrogen, a bad estrogen, or indifferent. It'll take it and it'll convert one to the other. So when they tell women, oh, you're getting a good estrogen, you're not getting a good estrogen. You might as well take the bad estrogen just as well. As far as progesterone, this is progestation. What happens is you pass ovulation, all of a sudden this thing goes up and comes back down. And I don't know whether I have testosterone there. Go ahead, next slide. Okay. That's all of them together. I put them all on the same scale now. That's what's actually happening inside of a woman. And it's pretty complicated. Okay, next slide. You're not falling apart. It works perfectly. This is the one that should have been before trace minerals. All those little lines all over, and those little bulbs are all the vitamins, minerals, and everything else that one would normally have. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. This is a trace mineral test that a person is given, and that's a normal one. Next slide. These are hair analyses. And next slide. Just keep going. You look at the copper, the fourth one over on that thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep your eye on that one and keep your eye on the zinc. Next slide. You notice the copper is dropping down. Everything else is dropping down. These are people. Go ahead, next slide. These are people that have gone from one age, and what I did is I went across the ages. I just went across menopause, and this one right now is you're looking at a person that's 73 years old, and you see where their minerals are. You see how low they are. Yeah. The menopausal woman, that copper drops all the way down to a critical point. She can't produce her hormones. Next slide. That's just a ratio. Go ahead, next slide. That's a death curve. That's okay. Next slide. I'll have that one on another one. That's the curve I wanted. That one is paramount. Because what this one shows the normal drop in minerals, and then you see that curve that comes in down below. That is the drop in minerals in a menopausal woman. All of a sudden, she comes off that curve, she heads for the floor, and when it reaches that point, she cannot produce her hormones internally. The pathways will not be filled. Everything goes wrong. She literally comes apart. The trick is to bring that curve back up where it belongs. You have to get rid of her stress, and that's exactly what we do with these products. What I do is I take something like this, and we call this fem phase, and I call it because it phases with fems, and that's why I call it that. But anyway, what this is pre-ovulation, this is post-ovulation. This would be Spanish, this would be Russian, let's say. They don't speak the same language on either side. The second thing is that these things have specific hormones in them to follow those curves. And what you do is that they take this thing and they line it up on the day of the first day of their period. And they literally follow the days of their period until they get to the 14th day approximately with this one. Then they switch to this one. And each one of the rises and falls, there's little graphs on this bottle that, remember, followed all those crazy curves. They follow those curves, and each one of those ups and downs in that curve is a timing point, just like a program in a computer, telling it where it should be, what it's supposed to be doing, and what language it's supposed to be speaking. Yes? You don't need that.
Why do women?
Because if a woman was on birth control pills, it changes the sensors in her hypothalamus. And it's an estrogen sensor that it changes. And what happens is she can't track her estrogen anymore. So that she has to she drives up the estrogen to an abnormal level, which is actually pathological.
Well, I guess I was asking a general question. Is it because of the way we live here? Why do women in America?
That's the reason.
Because of our diet?
No, it's actually because of the estrogen that we're taking in.
Extra estrogen?
Yes.
Through what source?
Through diet, everything we eat, the pesticides that we have, the DDT, the DDEs, the chemicals that we have, the amount of stress that we have drives it up.
What if we just grow a garden outside and went outside and picked and made on clean ground? It was highly normal.
There are women that are doing that, but they also did not take birth control pills.
Yes.
And they have no problems going through menopause. And next slide. I'm going to go through as fast as I can. That is going to kill me. Go ahead, next slide. We discussed that one. Okay, here's the key to the whole thing. When the estrogen ratio and the progesterogenic compounds within your body, within a woman's body, start coming closer and closer together, they reach pathological levels, and that's what causes the problem. The only thing that we're doing is we raise the progesterogenic compounds. When we raise the progesterogenic compounds, we override the estrogenic compounds, and then we don't have a problem. Okay. Now, if anybody wants to know anything else about menopause or anything such as that, just come and speak to me. I'll help you out. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can do a search for VIKTORA''S on the net, because I've got a website on there. Or what you can do is, you can go directly to the website. Now we have products for women that have a phase. In other words, they have their cycle. Then there's these perimenopausal ones, which are kind of in between. They have a cycle, but yet they don't have a cycle. Then there's ones for ones that have phantom cycles. Women have phantom cycles. Even though they actually don't have their period, they still have the cycle, and that can go on until 80 years old, by the way. Then there's ones for post that problem, so that they don't have any cycle, but they have problems. And then we've got ones for ovulation and also ones for PMS, and each one has been designed to take care of the individual problems. And that's it. I'm going to get myself killed if I don't get out of here. I thank you very much.
Thank you. I have an announcement to make.